Hello everyone, welcome to IMPRINT IELTS. I'm Varun Kular, and today we'll be talking about public administration as an optional. A lot of you, have been, actually sending messages talking about which optional to take. So, I will talk about an optional which I took during my time, right? And I scored 359 marks during my time when I took public administration as optional. Although after that there were some problems with the optional, but I saw the marks this year as well. So 330 marks plus have been achieved by various people this year. So definitely I say that public administration as optional can be thought of, right? So first, let's have a look at the books. The standard books are there. That first is that there's a book on administrative thinkers that is called Prasad and Prasad. First book I would always suggest. This is a must read. Repeated readings of this book at least 2 or 3 times is a must. I actually wrote this whole book by hand. Actually, I just copied the whole book, right? But I don't miss anything. Along with that, what I used to do was I actually use these new Vishal Mains topic-wise trend analysis book, and I used to basically with every thinker, I would actually write answers there. Then obviously in paper 2 we have the standard book is Rajni Goel and Ramesh K. Arora, right? Though it's a little old book, actually what you would really require is partial reading of this book along with the reading of D.D. Basu or any book on Constitution of India. Even the Bayer Act would do, I would say. Then obviously Lakshmi Narayan Agarwal, right? The Avasthi and Maheshwari book is extremely good. This is normally suggested to supplement other areas in GS in paper 1, that is, right? So these were the books that we normally refer. The other one, if you say that's there are too many books you're mentioning, so I suggest that take this one, Public Administration by M. Lakshmikant, and this works beautifully, right? Especially people who would be preparing for HCS, I would say that just buy this book, M. Lakshmikant. This is more than enough, right? All your problem for the optional paper, Haryana Civil Services, right? So the question now comes is, okay, we haven't really discussed this with us, the syllabus and everything, but before that, let's talk about why public administration. So if you think about it, actually you're applying to become an administrator, so it is the only logical choice. Okay, but the sad part is that the other optionals which are more scoring, right, like maths, which have no relevance to the paper. But what happens is in the future you will be bad administrators. You will clear the services, but you'll be have difficulties in being an administrator. So I normally suggest that it is best if you study public administration. Okay, right? As I've said, there's no point in studying chemistry, mathematics, physics, anthropology, political science, only to struggle the rest of your life as an administrator. Okay, though I'm not saying that obviously after you join services you can't learn about administration. I would definitely say that if you have studied public administration as an optional, it would really help you out. Then obviously if you think about the theories of administration which public administration talk about, we'll talk about that in a bit. These actually can be implemented. A lot of people say applications and theory are separate. Public administration has no theory which hasn't been already be applied. Hence, every theory, whether it's bureaucracy, whether it's Henry Fayol's 14 principles of management, whether it's Foley, whether it's anyone, I would say, all of them are actually applicable in real life as well. If you think about the most interesting application is Taylor, and if you think about all of us use Taylor every day when we try to solve a question of 250 marks in 10 minutes or less, right? That's Taylor. That's time and motion study in some ways, right? And the piece rate system of Narega is another example. Okay, so you said that, okay, sir, but maybe not this. Give me some other reasons. So I would say that best is कि इसका syllabus सबसे छोटा है. Okay, right? It has the smallest syllabus, right? It has the maximum overlap with GS papers. We'll talk about that in a bit. It is the most interesting, subject. I would say. Actually, I had chemistry as an optional as well during my time. But I believe that this I felt so interesting. I read a lot more public administration than even in chemistry. Okay, it gives you an advantage around 20 marks, right? In paper 2, that is GS3, right? Which is right. So that is something I would say that the reason why, if you take public administration, you'll always go higher in GS2, right? vis-a-vis other people, right? Most of my students who have taken public administration optional scored at least 20 marks more, and we'll talk about that in a bit. We're talking about the fact that public administration has the maximum overlap, so let's look at this. So here, Indian polity, governance, constitution, political system, panchayati raj, public policy, rights issues. So if you look into the preliminary exam syllabus itself, a sizable portion, at least 1/7 of the syllabus is public administration, the total overlap. Paper 2, if you have done it really well, you will never get a polity question wrong. During my time in prelims, I never even made a single mistake in my GS papers, right? Then maximum overlap. Let's look at the GS paper 3 or the GS paper 2, what we call it, general studies 2, right? Governance, constitution, social justice, polity, and international relations. So if you look at GS 2, right, all of it, right, is nothing but public administration. Study about everything in detail, in the detail that is required. Okay, if you study Lakshmikant, you realize it's not enough for mains. It is enough for prelims, but Lakshmikant, the polity book, is not enough. You'll never score high marks in GS2. Okay, so I will always suggest people who want to get high marks in GS2, please study public administration optional notes or paper 2. Right, and that really solve the problem, right? Whether it's comparison of Indian constitution scheme with others, whether it's parliamentary functioning or legislative functioning, whether it's departments, whether it's about pressure groups, because repeatedly there were questions coming up pressure groups, and that is a part of public administration as an optional. Okay. Even the salient feature representation of people act this year, definitely it's a very, very important topic because election is going on, and our election commission is being toothless and not doing enough. Definitely a question can be expected there. Then quasi-regulatory judiciary bodies, you learn much more in detail whether you do that in GS or not. That is up to you. Then NGOs, self-help groups, right? Issues related to poverty and hunger, social sector, role of civil services in democracy. All these topics, I would say, are going to be studied really in depth in detail. So that's something that I would say. Then, even if you say that GS2 maybe not enough, 20 marks may not be enough for you to go for public administration, I would say ethics paper, aptitude and foundational values for civil services, integrity, impartiality and non-partisanship, objectivity, dedication to public service, empathy, tolerance, compassion towards the weaker section. All of this is a part of public administration optional. Okay. Administration values, ethics in public administration is a topic that we normally study in public administration as well. The ethical constructs. We have a thinker, right? So that is also there. So as I was saying, all these values, accountability, ethical governance, all these things will be studied in public administration. We have, the fourth report of ethics and governance, and this is actually suggested for everyone to be read, right? And actually that is done in very much detail in public administration. Then is about property in governance, the concept of public service, the values, the philosophical basis of governance, information sharing and transparency in government, the RTI, the code of conduct, ethics, work culture, utilization of public funds. All these are studied in detail in public administration as an option, right? So I would say that because of these reasons, public administration perhaps is the most important or the most interesting choice and optional. Then what's the syllabus? So what all we'll be covering in the next videos and lectures. Meaning, scope and significance of public administration. Remember, public administration is from cradle to grave. So that is something that we will be talking about in detail in this lecture. Then we'll look into Wilson's vision of public administration. What does Wilson talk about it? So it was basically a discussion on the politics and administrative dichotomy, whether politicians should interfere in administration or should the administrator be left to administer themselves. Though in the present case, in democracy, it can't be the case, but Wilson wanted a dichotomy. He said that separation should be there, administrators should be left to administer, and politicians should do their politics. And then what's the evolution of discipline, how it has changed. So it basically started with Wilson, right? It came out of political science as a discipline, though there are historical constructs of Purushan administration and of Chanakya, right? In the present case, if you think about it, we're going into the era of digital governance, and you will have the jam trinity. We are in the post-NPM region, right? New public administration, we were into economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. But now again, because of rapid unemployment, we are going to go back to the NPA, right, which is values, equity, etc. Right, we'll get into these terms a little more detail when we talk about in the lectures further. Right, the part is the public choice approach, right, giving the public the choice. The challenge of liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Like if you think about the biggest challenge of LPG is today the wage problem. That the wages are not going. There's growth, but there are no good paying jobs. So that is the challenge of LPG, if nothing else. Good governance as a concept, I think this is something that in GS also will help. The new public management that I talked about, the three cornerstone of NPM are economy, efficiency, and effectiveness. So that is something that you need to go into. Then administrative thought, number 2 point. So in administrative thought, we'll study scientific management and scientific management movement, which basically caused the industrial revolution in the 1900s, made USA the country it is. Then we talk about the classical theory, how the experiences of various managers became into principles, or we go like the 30 principles, Fayol's 14 principles, etc. Then the Weber's bureaucratic model and its critique, and the post-Weberian developments. The dynamic administration of Fowler, which she basically talks about the fact that it is not just hierarchy, because Weber only talked about hierarchy, whereas Mary Fowler said it is the person his functionality that basically allows authority to happen. Then HRT, which basically says that scientific management is basically nothing but is making a person in a brick into the wall, right? We have a famous Pink Floyd song, but it is basically atomization of a human being. Then the functions of the executive by Bernard, which talks about the functions, and I think he is my favorite thinker, and we'll talk about him in much more detail. Then Simon's decision-making theory, how decisions should be made, how do we come to the concept of bounded rationality, to satisficing. We're talking about the zone of indifference and the zone of acceptance by Bernard and Simon. So these were the behavioralist schools. Then we came to the participative management of Likert, Igris, and McGregor, the theory X and theory Y, where theory X thinks of a person as a beneficiary, right? On the other hand, theory Y thinks of a person as a contributor, right? So how that was happening and how the systems of participant management exist, right? So that all those things would be there, right? Then what are the techniques of decision making, the communications theory, the moral motivation theories. Here we go towards more of HR. We look into a book called Robbins, Theory of Leaderships. Okay, how is a transactional leader different from transformational? How Narendra Modi is different, right? How Barack Obama is different from, let's say, a king, right? Like King Salman. If you think about Saudi Arabia, how is different from Narendra Modi, right? So that is the question. Then organization, so theories, contingencies, structures. Normally, the question which comes from this is on a public-private partnership or on headquarter field relationships. These are the two questions which normally come. A lot of things are there in syllabus, but are never going to come in the exam. That is the case, right? Then the most important topic is accountability and control. You'll always get a question on RTI or social audit in your exam. You will always get a question of voluntary organizations, civil society. But there will be limited questions on executive or judicial control of administration. Though now what is happening is judicial is actually going more and more, and there'll be articles there itself on this in the newspaper itself, where the Sabrimala case, etc. Right, when the government says that there'll be no firecrackers after 10 p.m. Judiciary is becoming the administration. So we can talk about that. Then different type of accountability, the political accountability, the legislative accountability, the administrative accountability, and so on. We'll talk about that in this topic. Then administrative law, meaning, scope, significance, what does DICE say, etc. Delegated legislation, a question normally every year used to come on delegated legislation, not so much these days. Administrative tribunals, which is again very, very important. That's also there. Then perhaps the most important, the most interesting thing, which I would say, if you read about Riggs, right, Riggs model and its critique, you realize everything that is happening in India today can be explained by CPA, the Comparative Public Administration chapter, and by Riggs. How society is impacting administration, why there is corruption in India, why there is nepotism in India. So Riggs basically told us all of that and its critique. So 7th chapter, I would say it's one of the most important. right, when we'll do it in detail. Then development concept, whether we should have a strong market or the state, the impact of liberalization or administration, or whether the development model has failed, right? Because after the World War, development was the concept. There should be a development administration, that the government should take over everything, which is now going away. Then women in development, the self-help movement, and this is extremely important. As you know, this has also been picked up from here and put into GS2. Okay. Then personnel administration, and if you say, last year the most important question which came out of this was lateral entry. So again, importance of HRD, recruitment, training, career advancement. Normally there's a question on training, that whether training is a paid holiday. This kind of questions normally come. Then grievance redressal system, code of conduct, again, administrative ethics. So this actually is overlapping with the ethics paper. Okay, so again, this is important. Then public policy models of policy making and their critique. This is a difficult topic, a separate book sometimes is studied for this. State theory is how policy is formulated, evaluated, etc. This was much more important before Niti Aayog, but previously question used to come on the Planning Commission. Now maybe on the Niti Aayog, a question will come here. Then the techniques of administrative improvement. Normally, when we remember, I took the exam, a question on PERT or CPM used to come every time. E-governance and information technology are also there. Today, M-governance would be a part of this, right? A lot of things might not be mentioned, but might still be asked, right? So then financial administration, fiscal and budgetary policies. So basically in this, we just study the union budget. If you've done it well enough, that's good enough here. Let's look at paper 2 now. So it has certain theories. So we'll study, the legacies, Kautilya's Arthashastra, which is perhaps the most beautiful book and very enlightening. We'll go into him, we'll discuss him in a lecture itself. Mughal administration, a bit of history books are normally referred for this. Legacy of British rule in Indian politics, a standard thing. This is just straightforward from Lakshmikant. Then we have the second chapter, which is very important because a lot of people study politics, but most people don't understand it, and a lot of people in prelims don't get good marks because they don't appreciate the background. So the features, the value premises, the constitutionalism, the political culture, how India is, what is the debate between bureaucracy and democracy, what is the debate between bureaucracy and development, so on. So I think is big, is something, if you are clear here, you'll understand what India is in a much more detail. Okay, so bureaucracy, rigid, rule-based, etc. Democracy, change-oriented, people-centric. So, there's a clash there. Bureaucracy, again, rigid, slow, status quo. Development wants change, wants some action. So the clash, is going to be discussed here. Public administration, PSUs, like Air India will be discussed, right? Here, I think a question on Air India can happen, impact of liberalization, privatization in various sectors. Problems of autonomy in PSUs is a standard question which used to come here, right, itself. In union government and administration, I think these are just questions. These are just directly from public administration itself. Easy, these are, you just need to read through them. Though there's a question which normally comes on the PMO's, analysis, that how the PMO has become more stronger or weaker depending on the Prime Minister. That's a question which is there. A question on the Chief Secretary sometimes comes. This is from Unit 6, right? What is his role? How he is different from, how the Chief Secretary is stronger than the Cabinet Secretary, right? And so on. Then the role of the Finance Commission, a question on the 15th Finance Commission is possible. Right, so that's another thing that can happen. Then planning, machinery, role, composition of planning commission. So this, Unit 5 is kind of not that important anymore. It goes now, basically you have to go through the Niti Aayog, right, instead of what is being mentioned. This should have been amended by the UPSC, but I don't know why they have not done so. In district administration, so basically the question which comes is how the DC is like, a tortoise on which the weight of all the India is there. The question comes there, then how, there is globalism now. So there's global things. So TikTok has to be banned, right? So how a DC is now doing that, right? How he's going to implement that, that's going to be very difficult for him. So globalism, that's what. global things which are impacting local areas now. Civil services, neutrality, civil service activism again is a topic, right? Considering we have the Mamata Banerjee issue, the flare-up between Mamata and Narendra Modi during the case. The police commissioner of Bengal was raided by the CBI, right? And the CBI fiasco last year itself, I would say, a question on that can easily come this year. Then financial management, the role of finance ministry in monetary and physical areas for the fiscal deficit issues. There's a standard question which used to come on CAG very regularly in the previous years, but this would have changed. Budget as a political instrument definitely is a possibility as a question coming, because we have the most beautiful scheme, the PM Kisan scheme coming, and how this is totally political in nature, a question can come there. Then administrative reforms since independence, concerns, etc. So from Paul Appleby to the Santhanam Commission to the PC Hota Commission and so on, right? So we'll study them and what recommendations they have made. Then rural and urban development, this is already there in GS as well. So this is a very huge overlap, I would say, right? Here we discuss about the Panchayati Raj impact on gender and so on. We write an answer how women have become more empowered because of the 73rd and 74th Amendment, right? And also the problems of urban local governance which are happening. That is another question which comes. Then law and administration, we will discuss here the public police relations reforms in police. Prakash Singh, recommendations have still to be done, right? Implemented. The Supreme Court in the Prakash Singh case had given instructions, but hasn't been happened. The DGP controversy which happened this year, again, is a question which can be asked in the 13th unit. Then significant issues in public administration, corruption and administration, disaster management, which is a topic in, as I said, in GS3, citizen administrative interface, again, a topic in GS2 and GS4, right? Problems of administration coalition regime is a topic, again, which might again crop up in case we have a coalition this year. National Human Rights Commission, regulatory commissions, values in public administration, and so on. So all this makes public administration, I would say, the most important, right? Remember, you will have to kind of understand that you'll have to write current affairs in GS1 and you will have to write theory in GS2. Okay, you have to relate, and during the course of our lectures, we would be talking about this in the future. Right. So stay tuned for our lectures on public administration. We'll be starting soon, right? And us today. And this is a Telegram group. Join us for the PDFs of the lectures in the future. Thank you so much.